Hey everybody, Dr. Jens with CCJ3701. We're picking up with part two of measuring crime in our communities. We left off with the National Crime Victimization Survey. So this is a government-sponsored survey of victims about their experiences with law violation. It actually begun in 1972. So we have lots of years of data. We get the demographics of the victims, the relationships between victim and offender, the context of how things happened, the connection they may have had with the offender. However, it does suffer from over-reporting, meaning you're overlapping your accounts, multiple offenses, and also under-reporting because you maybe not reveal some of the things you normally would because your fear of retaliation, lack of privacy, even though it is confidential, so people still just don't feel comfortable sharing. Or it was very traumatic and you're going through coping and healing processes still. So it's got a pretty big sample size. You can see that N 50,000 to 100,000. So it's got a good capture of cases that we can use statistics on. Murder is the only crime not captured on the NCVS because the dead victim cannot be questioned for obvious reasons. So all the other crimes are there except murder. So with the NCVS, how does it do on these crime relationships that we talk about? So sex and crime, we actually get a little bit better here. We have certain gender norms of reporting crime, but we're still left with questions about the victim-offender relationship, even though we get more detail. It's not quite perfect at that, but it does okay. Age and crime, we show that strong, consistent relationship and agreement when we compare what we find here to things that we find from the UCR. Yes, younger people are offending. Age and crime, race and crime, victim surveys indicated more racial disparities. So this is something we also have to keep in mind. Blacks tended to underreport more serious crimes and underreporting problems, particularly in family-based crimes. So if we think about those two phenomena, blacks underreporting more serious crimes, sometimes that has to do with a very legitimate fear of police and fear of involvement with the police, especially if they live in neighborhoods where there is tension. So, of course, we would see some of that. And then family-based crimes, if you're related to the victim and the offender, it gets really complicated to talk about some of the unfortunate events that are happening inside your family, especially when it comes to things like violence. So you wouldn't find those as much, although they are captured here. Social class, it'll capture a perceived instead of an actual social class. So most people say I'm middle class, but that may or may not be true. And remember, we tend to measure social class with your life chances or your status in society. We use things like your income, your education, how prestigious your job is, the things you own, how much debt you have, kind of your community standing. Those are all different ways to measure your social class in society, kind of how you rank compared to other people. And most people are going to get that a little bit wrong because they want to look good. So anyway, those are some of the relationships in NCVS, but also a great source of data on crime. And then lastly, we turn to self-report surveys. It's a research approach that you're seeing in Ad Health. So Ad Health from our class is a self-report survey. The Children's Health Data Set is a self-report survey. The General Social Survey is a self-report survey. So this is where we just voluntarily get feedback from people through questions, through a survey. So we'll ask our subject or a respondent to describe in detail their recent and lifetime participation in criminal activity. So you can say, did you do this? If you did, how often did you do it? How did you do it? You can also get victim information here too. So you can get offender or victim. You may also ask participants about past, present, and future hypothetical criminal behavior, which is kind of fun. Where you go, okay, in the past 12 months, have you participated in a group fight with weapons? In the past, 2 weeks, have you been binge drinking? So a lot of times we'll ask within a certain time period, or we say, are you currently using drugs? You get the present. Or if presented the opportunity to use heroin, would you? Right? So it's kind of fun to do the hypothetical. If you knew you weren't going to get caught, would you want to try heroin? Stuff like that. The methodology of self-reports can make them inaccurate at times with falsification, people just flat out lying on a survey. But you learn really quickly it's a lot of work to lie on a survey. It actually takes more effort and time to do that than it is to just tell the truth. So We have ways for managing that and research methods where we try to structure the survey in a way that gets people to kind of be more authentic and honest, where they, can recall easy things and ask the questions in a simple manner. So those are little tricks of the trade we use with surveys. Recall bias, I just can't remember. I forgot. Overlapping responses, I'm confusing things that happened to me this year with stuff I did last year. Respondent confusion, and we've talked about this with survey questions, just bad question wording. I'm not really sure what you're asking. Social desirability, this is kind of going back to what we saw with NCVS. I want to look good. I want to look desirable, and I'm going to describe myself in more flattering ways than I really am. So that can happen as well. Tapping into mostly petty offenses of middle-class white students. AdHealth in particular interviewed kids at school, and so the argument is, well, what about the kids that dropped out of school, that weren't there on the day of the survey? What about the kids that are currently incarcerated or that are in probation programs and moved to alternative high schools, or, they're not going to be as available to you. So you're just really tapping into petty theft and stuff like that, kids that aren't on probation are doing. So there is that criticism as well. But it does provide very rich data with details on social class or socioeconomic status, SES. So we can ask what the household income is. We can ask the education of the kid and their parents, kind of get a sense of how well off the family is. We can get background and context, ask them about things they do with their friends, about their community, their personality, attitudes and beliefs, mental health, you name it. So self-report surveys are really great in terms of getting a rich landscape of information. That's one of the reasons I use AdHealth, is you have lots of different things you can use for your research question. For race and crime, we can also get after more elements of studying race, like attitudes of racism, fear, distrust, self-preservation. But of course, we're going to have trouble capturing multiracial people. So we have to think about that when we ask people about their racial identity, how would they describe that? It's sometimes tricky to get at questions that perfectly capture that. Race violence linkages can be captured in community. But you might not get it directly in a self-report. But we have other surveys we've done, like the National Youth Survey, which had specific questions and reference points like deviance or delinquency in the past month, the 6 months, the last year. And so, those are some of the things we have to work with in a self-report survey. Sex and crime, kind of the criticism is add gender and stir. Like, are you really just examining gender norms, different ways that the different genders behave with each other. You're measuring the gender gap in offending, the differences between men and women committing offenses, but, there's more to it. And so there is more expansion to do there. Good, consistent relationships, strong relationship between age and crime. And again, social class. Generally, you don't see big differences between social class. But sometimes you see delinquency exaggerated a little bit in the middle class. And you don't often get chronic or serious offenders because they're just not going to be in your sample. So anytime you do a survey and you collect data, you go, where did this come from? How did I get it? Does it include people who are incarcerated? Does it include people on probation? Did it come from the courts? Did it come from a prison? So what does that mean about the kind of things I'm going to find in there? So again, those are things you have to think about, and that's all research methodology. That's what you're doing, is you're looking at how you're getting information and how you're measuring it, and then what you're concluding about it, what you're actually going to analyze and learn about the world. So these are some primary sources of data. So again, just kind of little chart about that. Not going to go into a lot of detail, but just keep in mind we have uniform crime reports, on victimization surveys and self-report surveys. Certainly NIBRS we talked about as well. But this is when studying crime, I think it's really fun because you can look at things like regions, you can look at states, you can look at types of crime, things like hate crimes, right? So we look at the motivation for crime. And I had a student ask me, well, who cares about hate crimes? I mean, isn't assault and isn't murder? And I said, well, I mean, in a way that's true, but because the offender doesn't care about the victim unless they fit a certain identity, it kind of makes them a more dangerous offender because it makes us need to protect victims of that identity in a more widespread manner. So we do care about hate crimes because it's hard to target risky zones and safe zones if we just know this group is going after this group. We can't really guard any one victim, and so it makes the danger potential a lot higher. So hate crimes are kind of an interesting classification. These are active hate groups. This actually goes into some of the class I teach on terrorism. So we study this quite a bit. And what's kind of funny about this is I moved from the West, which is over here in Idaho. So between Idaho and Montana, we have a lot of active hate groups in that area. So I could have done a lot of research over there if I wanted to. A lot of militia movements over there. So again, just looking at crime trends and crime rates. So there's a lot of different arguments that people look at. You can read about this in books like Freakonomics, in Outliers. And there's lots of different perspectives. Economists write about it. People that do urban planning write about it. Sociologists, criminologists, psychologists, biologists, they all have, their own version of how things work. So, you can look at a lot of different ideas and challenge ideas about what we accept as true and whether there's actually data and evidence and statistics to back it up. So that's where this class comes in. This is where you get to test all these ideas and all the things you've been told in any class you want to see if there's really good support for it. Maybe you want to replicate a relationship that you were taught. Maybe you want to see if it actually is true for yourself, and you're welcome to do that. So this just, again, gives you a chance to see exactly how data and statistics can work in studying such an important phenomenon such as crime. So hopefully this fills in the gap of why we're messing around with data, why we're recoding, why we're in lots of data sets, why we're making changes to data, because there's a lot of pieces to do in order to really answer questions that are as complicated as crime is. So hopefully this filled that in for you, and we'll see you next time.